Meantime, over on Capitol Hill, Bill Gates is speaking behind closed doors, giving voluntary testimony about his ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In his opening remarks, Gates told the House Oversight Committee that he had no knowledge of Epstein's crimes. He described his interactions with Epstein as limited, which he says ended altogether in December of 2014. Gates also said that meeting with Epstein was a grave error in judgment, but denied ever visiting Epstein's island, ranch, or home in Florida. Gates was referenced hundreds of times in the Justice Department's Epstein files that were released earlier this year. He has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing related to Epstein. We're joined now by Arick Fudali. He's an attorney representing 11 of Epstein's accusers. Arick, thanks so much for being with us. What have you made of Gates' testimony so far, the details that are emerging?
Well, what's interesting is when Bill Gates acknowledges he first met Jeffrey Epstein in around 2011. And what's important about that is after 2008. And in 2008, while I have plenty to say about the miscarriage of justice, brought on by Alex Acosta and the sweetheart deal, what did happen in 2008 is Jeffrey Epstein became a publicly registered sex offender. So that means Bill Gates' entire relationship with Jeffrey Epstein occurred during the time and after Jeffrey Epstein was a publicly registered sex offender, publicly available knowledge. So either Bill Gates did not do any research into the person he was about to do business with or associate with, or he just chose to ignore it and associate with him as well. The other thing that's interesting about that is the people who surrounded themselves with Jeffrey Epstein, who surrounded Jeffrey Epstein, were working with him closely, perhaps had friendships with him. Bill Gates was certainly privy to those people because he was around Jeffrey Epstein after 2008. So I'm very interested to see some of the names that he's disclosed about who was closely tied to the registered sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Gates, again, says his interactions with Epstein ended altogether in December of 2014. Do you have any clients, have they shared with you any recollections of Gates being in Epstein's orbit?
No recollection of Bill Gates being in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit. And they certainly, there are a lot of, powerful people in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit all the time. He also would keep photographs of himself on his desk as a means of intimidating his victims by showing, here's me with this leader, here's me with this, billionaire. So he certainly surrounded himself with a lot of powerful people like Bill Gates. And there are certainly plenty of Bill Gates types in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit.
Yeah, Gates said in his opening remarks that Epstein was using personal information, including details about infidelity, to try and get closer to him. Based on what you've heard from your clients, how big a pattern was this? Because one thing we've heard over and over about Epstein, including in unverified reports, is that he sought to get blackmail from people. I imagine that your clients heard similar.
Oh, absolutely. So it's a really interesting point you bring up because Jeffrey Epstein, and I say this in the most, non-complimentary way, was a master manipulator. But what people are surprised to hear about is it wasn't just a master of manipulating his victims. He also was a very good manipulator of those around him, those, his, what you would call his equals, his associates, people with, as much power and money, him, or perhaps even with more power and money than him. So he was very keen at finding people's weaknesses, finding ways to control people, whether it was his victims that he'd control with money or intimidation or fear or blackmail or power, or it was his associates that he would use blackmail, other manipulation tactics. So that's not surprising at all for me to hear. That was really a part of Jeffrey Epstein's playbook, not just with his victims, but with the many people he associated with himself. That's why he kept such enormous power. And I believe why he kept such a powerful circle of friends.
Arick, I want to get your thoughts on some new reporting for an upcoming book by New York Times' Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. They have reported that last July, Vice President J.D. Vance suggested during a meeting at the White House about how to approach President Trump's name being in the Epstein files, that Tucker Carlson do a sit-down interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. He believed that it would help the president. And also in their reporting, it indicates that now Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche volunteered to do that interview. And as we know, that is what eventually happened. What do you make of all those details?
Very unsurprising. I mean, everything this administration or this Department of Justice has done as it relates to these Epstein files has appeared to be to protect Donald Trump or to protect Donald Trump's motivations or his agenda. I mean, that has been clear from the very start. Remember, we didn't even need a law to release these Epstein files. Trump could have just released them. The DOJ could have just released them. But of course, they required Congress to get a law and all this, and then Trump signed it at midnight or whatever happened there. Every single thing we've seen has been related to or reveals to any reasonable person watching as a cover-up, starting with the fact that one of my clients was listed 500 times in the Epstein files, even though her name was supposed to be redacted. Compare that to the fact that all of Jeffrey Epstein's associates and alleged facilitators are meticulously redacted. No names appear of the potential facilitators. This entire thing has been a massive cover-up. So to hear, sort of what was been obvious to all of us, that behind the scenes, Vance, Trump, Todd Blanchard are all having meetings as to how to continue to protect Trump and make Trump look good through all this is, the least surprising thing I've heard all week.
And last question, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer, has said that he plans to ask Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who we should know President Trump has asked to or has nominated to permanently fill the position, to testify in July. What questions would you have for Todd Blanche?
Wow, a lot of questions. Well, the first thing before we get to questions is this can't be behind closed doors, and it needs to be an under oath actual testimony deposition, not like with Pam Bondi where it's just a behind closed doors, non-under oath interview. It has to be under oath, and the people of the United States should be able to watch. And the first question should be why are these names redacted? I'd like them to go through. There's one that always comes to mind where there's an email exchange where someone, a redacted name, is saying something to Epstein along the lines of, I really liked that young girl or something along those lines. I want them to show these names to Todd Blanchard and say, why is this one redacted? Why is this one redacted? How on earth did you miss the client, Arick Fudali's client, that was disclosed 538 times? What went into this? Why did you interview Ghislaine Maxwell? Why didn't you push back on Ghislaine Maxwell when she denied things that have already been verifiably true? I mean, I could go on and on. I don't know how much time we have here today. I could go on and on with all the questions that need to be asked of Todd Blanche. But the first and foremost is that this can't be a behind closed doors interview. It has to be a public, under oath testimony.
Arick Fudali, always appreciate you joining us.
Thanks a lot.